Hello everyone and welcome to episode 3 of MCCM's Mates Rates podcast. Today we are talking to Reece Smith, the co-founder and manager of Mayhap Coffee in Tyldesley. We will be discussing his business setup and rating it out of 1 to 10 and also discussing a little bit about what he's doing now. So, welcome to the podcast, mate. You okay?
No. Yeah, amazing. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. So, we had a little chat just before we got rolling then, and you told us you've watched the first 2 podcasts, so you'll know what the premise is about. Ultimately, we're having a chat with you about your business setup. It's just a friendly chat about how you got into this business, rate your experience in setting it up, and obviously just impart a little bit of advice for our listeners. So we'll get straight into it. Okay, so the first question is, can you tell us a little bit about your setup journey of Mayhap Coffee?
So we'll be open 2 years in January, but previous to that, Matt was about 18 months beforehand. So it was a bit of a long process getting it ready, really. And then even when we went to open, it was coming out of COVID. So then it was trying to make sure plan A, plan B, if we can't open, do we have to open as takeaway only? Do we have to find a chef? What staff do we need? So the overall opening process a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a strange story, yours, in the sense that where you're based in Tyldesley, for the people who are listening or watching this don't know, Tyldesley's a strange little place, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of like bringing something like your brand
Yeah.
into a town that has historically just had greasy spoon cafes, it was something that no one had ever seen before. So talk us a little bit through why you chose Tyldesley and what's happened since then.
Yeah. So I think even before we got the property that we're in now, I think Matt had his eye on the nursery just across the road.
Okay.
So that was always another property that looked amazing. There's a lot of potential, and I think the high street, there is a lot of potential on the high street. The fact that we're a little bit tucked away is amazing. Like, I love it. We're not on the main strip. We just kick down the side a little bit. I think it was just, they saw that there was an opportunity to have a commercial property as well as, we do have the flats above. So it just all tied in really nicely. A lot of work went into it, but I think now we're there, it's great.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people have described your brand or your place as kind of a little bit of the northern quarter in Tyldesley, which I think, like you've just alluded to, then there's a lot of potential on that high street. And when you look at what's been done to places like Monton and Atherton, it's definitely something that could be done to Tyldesley, and you're kind of ahead of the curve with that.
I think that's it. It was always, let's try bring Manchester to the suburbs, and I think that's what we tried to do. No one really does what we do. There's pubs, there's, the greasy spoons, there's everything else there. So trying to just elevate it a little bit. I always say, like, for me, Monton's always my go-to. Like, I've worked in Monton, I've helped people out there before, and that strip now, it's like really nice bars, brunch places. There's a place called Wandering Palette that does like amazing natural wine. Like, everything's in Monton, everything. Yeah. So to have something similar to that in Tyldesley. And there are more places that have opened since us, so the area is doing well, and I think there'll be more to open. So it's just making sure everyone stays on it now and just keep going.
Yeah, but you've been the catalyst for it, which is great. And I think that because you're almost like the acid test for the area, it has opened up opportunities to other people who want to kind of follow suit in terms of quality, not necessarily what you do, but to get the standard to where they want it to be. So tell us a little bit more about the actual setup experience. You alluded to it before, that obviously COVID was a massive stumbling block or a hurdle that you had to overcome. Yeah. So just tell us how you overcome that in the initial phases of the setup.
I think we were due to open like on a Monday, and I think there was an announcement on a Friday. So it was like up until Friday, we didn't know if it was going to be takeaway only, what was going to happen with that. And we had such a small staff team. So it was me, Matthew, a head chef and a sous chef, and that was it. So, I think opening day, everything was back to normal, no more COVID, that just disappeared. So it was like, right, let's crack on. And I remember the first half an hour we opened, no one came in. And I was like, yeah, that's it. Let's shut the door. We'll go home. Because it was like all this hard work, putting menus together, getting everything ready. Even Matt, with all the development beforehand, first half an hour, nothing. So I was like, right, that's it. It's failed. Let's go. And then I think after that, about an hour or two later, I was ringing my other half, and I was like, yeah, you're working today. Matt did the same. He got his missus in, and then from there, it was just like, right, who can work, get everybody in. And it just didn't take its foot off. That was it. It was just busy.
It's brilliant. I mean, it has been a great story. I mean, obviously, we'll go into what happened after the setup in a little minute. But in terms of, obviously, one of my favourite haunts in Tilsley, yours is definitely it. So I think question one, we've kind of covered everything. So in terms of, obviously, the setup experience, taking into account, obviously, that first half an hour of absolutely breaking it, not people not turning up, and COVID and everything else, and the research that you put into it. Just rate your setup experience on a scale of 1 to 10.
I'd say 5. Yeah, I think like we had all bases covered, so no matter what happened, we would have opened, but it just would different capacity. So if it was takeaway only, that's what we would have done, you know. And I think it's always been something that we've tried to do was like we stay ahead. So like no matter what happens, there's a plan A, plan B, plan C. I mean, first day, like the till goes down. So it's like we have to find a new wire for the till. It's just everything that could have happened. And it was like, we always have to make sure we're ready. You know, we can't take our foot off. We can't just, you know, be like, oh, no, it's fine, we'll close today. We've never closed since we've opened. So that's it. We just need to stay consistent and smash it now.
Yeah, well, middle ground 5. I mean, we did a lot of research before we started the podcast, and a lot of business owners that we spoke to, and we kind of tried these questions on. Just in like general chit chat, they said that 5 was probably their setup experience. And then obviously you move on to the challenges that actually come along with setting up a business and having to sustain that business for a longer period of time. So like you say, you've been there 2 years now.
2 years in January,
2 years. So within those 2 years, it must have thrown up some challenges. I know it has thrown up some challenges because we've had these discussions like previously. So tell us about the biggest challenge that you faced whilst you've been there.
So we had these 2 really. I think the one that hit us hardest was just initial staff turnover. So we had a head chef and a sous chef literally leave with no notice. And the next day we got a text being like, oh yeah, we're not coming back, we've been given another opportunity. So like 4 a.m. the next day, me and Matt are in the kitchen figuring it out. And again, we don't close, times don't change, we figure it out, and that's what we do. I think that was the most challenging on myself and Matt. The other one would be, so I think it would have been 1st of May this year. We got a letter, someone in London trying to sue us for what the shop was called at the time.
Yeah.
And even then, that although it was, you know, a bit of a pain, you know, we're working with a team at the moment for the next project, and they handled everything. So then we rebranded, so it was from Redemption Coffee and Kitchen to Mayhap. And it was frustrating, but I think a lot of the feedback from the customers were that they don't come to us because of what we called. They come to us because of the experience, the food, the drinks. So it doesn't matter what it's called. You know, we could change again tomorrow, and I don't think it'd make any difference. You know, what we've done in the 2 years we've been there is you know, very like community based, and everyone's a regular that comes in, and I think that's a big thing for us, is making sure if someone comes in, everyone says hi. If someone leaves, everyone says bye, and it's a little bit more than just you're popping in for a coffee. And I think that's where we got it right. So no matter what we called ourselves, it wouldn't have made any difference for us.
Yeah, and I think that's testament to the hard work, and obviously what you spoke about before when you said that we adapt, we don't stop.
Yeah.
Name changes, I mean, you know, we're called MCCM. If you ask 50 of our clients what our name is, I guarantee 40 of them would get it wrong. They wouldn't know what it is. But tell us a little bit more about Mayhap. What is Mayhap? Because I actually like the story behind this, so it'd be interesting to share it with the viewers.
So there's 2 stories really. So originally, so we're working with a marketing team at the moment for our new project.
What do you mean you're working with a marketing team? What's going on here, Reece? Anyway,
so we've got a marketing team on, and we're working on the new project. So we kind of shortlisted 3 names for the coffee roastery. So when we got the letter through I think it was an email actually, saying that if we don't change our name, we've got 6 weeks, we're going to get sued. Yeah. The hard work was kind of already done. So the imaging was done, the branding was done, everything was done. So it was like, oh, we'll just have that one.
Yeah, so you kind of struck lucky.
Yeah, very good timing, very good time. And then the nice part of it is where we can say to people like, oh, it just means like what may happen will happen kind of thing. So like I said, even my daughter now, she's still like, oh, we're going to Redemption. I'm like, yeah, we're going to Redemption. Yeah. You know, it'll always be that.
I think it's the age old kind of mentality of small towns that they still call places the name that they've been called previously.
Look at Cellar 5 now. So even Cellar 5 reopened as Cellar 5, but before then everyone's like, yeah, it's Cellar 5. And it's always going to be a thing, you know. Like, I'm not originally from Tilsley, so a lot of places, when they'll say, like, oh, where the old co-op is, I'm like, I don't know what you mean. But everyone just knows it as, like, that's what it was at one point. But yeah, like, I think Cellar 5's still the same now. Even before they opened it, I was like, what are you going to call it? It's like, oh, well, it's Cellar 5. I was like, I don't know what you mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's good that people still know where you are based on whether it's Redemption or Mayhap. And like you say, that reputation precedes you now. So, like you say, you could change the name tomorrow, or you could change it 50 times over the next couple of years, and it'd still have that reputation as a good place to go.
I think this year was a good one, especially, like, you know, with the shop we managed on socials, we did really well. So Manchester's Finest, Eat Manchester, Manchester Confidential, all visited within about a 6-month period. So for the shop, that's amazing. The followers that come with that is great, and we seem to be one of them places now that I think it must be every day we get, like, you know, someone's visited or they've tagged us in a post and they've reviewed this and they've done that, and it's great. As long as they're positive reviews, I'm happy. So
that's great. I mean, the coming out of the adversity of all those challenges as well and getting to the stage that you've done now is fantastic. So I guess on that note, how would you rate the most difficult challenge that you've come up against? I know you said there were 2 there, but if you could flip a coin and say, actually, that was my hardest challenge, how would you rate that in terms of difficulty overcoming?
Yeah, definitely like a 2, and it'll be staff turnover. I think the initial staff turnover, like now, the team we've got is amazing, and I couldn't ask for a better team. And we have a really small team, which allows everyone to, you know, to have a contract and have regular hours and everything that they need. So if it's additional staff training that they want, they've always got everything that they like. But yeah, I think that's the tricky thing, was losing 2 staff and just being like, right, now we need to try find staff, but we can't close, and we need to try stay open, and then be consistent in what we're doing, because we set the bar really high coming out. So it was like, now there's me and Matt that are not chefs, and we have to work in the kitchen on Saturday, and there's a queue out the door, and now I don't have anyone on the coffee machine because I'm in the kitchen. So it was just like, we just figure it out, and I think we did. I know there's a big thing about, like, you create your own look, and I do believe in that, but I think we were very lucky that there was no, like, fallback from that. There was no, like, bad reviews. Or I still think that now, like, on a Saturday and a Sunday when there's a half an hour wait on food and a queue out the door and down the street, I'm like, how we don't get bad reviews for people. Like,
you've created a demand, haven't you? So, and I think that's what works for any brand or any company, especially in the catering or hospitality industry. If you create that demand and you create a brand that people want to be part of, they will wait half an hour outside in the pouring down rain for a stack of pancakes. And you know I've done it because the mint, I enjoy them. So, but no, that's great, mate. That's really good. And obviously that kind of, that coming out of that adversity and those issues that you've faced and getting to that and rating it a 2. I mean, my head had popped at that point. I mean, I lost a couple of members of staff early doors when we started the business. And I found it really difficult to come back from that, because sometimes you can take it a little personal as well when people leave, but you've got to get past it, and you're testament to how that works well.
I think I've had that, though, even these elements now where staff have left or gone to do different things, where although I might try not to, there'll be an element of where I will take that personally, because, like I said, we do have a small team. So everyone that comes on board, and I know there's this weird, like, oh, we're all family and we're not, you know, we are work colleagues, and I get that. We are, you know, I do spend a lot of time with the people at work, but if someone tomorrow is like, I'm going to step away, I'd be like, of course, that's absolutely fine.
But it feels like that, doesn't it? Because when you're with people for, you know, 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, and it is a small team and it's a close-knit team, you do become like family. I remember putting job ads out where it was just like at the bottom, it was like, no dickheads, like on a job ad, because we were like, we just need people in. The biggest thing for me now was, if I'm hiring, I don't do experience, because I'm like, for me personally, with experience comes bad habits. So if I can get someone in now that knows nothing, it might take me a little bit longer to train them, but I can train them how I want. Rather than being like, no, don't do that. You know what? That's great advice for people who are watching as well, because ultimately what we want people to take away from these episodes is little bits of advice and guidance from experienced businessmen like yourself. And something like that is something that we've tried to implement at MCCM as well. So we based our entire roster of staff on college leavers, university leavers, apprentices. And I think that you do get to influence them a little bit more and give them that guidance and support. So that's totally in line with the way that we think.
Even for me, like I started off, like when I left college, I went into mental health. So when my jump across to hospitality, every job I'd apply for would be like, "Oh, I know you need experience," and I'm like, "I'm trying, so just give me that experience and I'll run with it." And it took a long time to be like, I did like Subway, Costa. I did what I needed to do to get where I am now, because I knew that there was a path there. And there's always people that you work with that are just happy and content, coming in, clocking out, doing the bare minimum. And I think if you're just driven, even a little bit, and just commit, you'll fly through. I've done hospitality for 4 years now, so it's not a long time.
Yeah.
And it was,
Is it only 4 years?
4 years,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
I mean...
But like that was the progression for me that was really good. So it was like I went from Costa to speciality to I was the general manager of Federal in Manchester, and they're like probably the top brunch place in Manchester.
Yeah.
And then I went to head of partnerships with a company called 92 that are based in Liverpool. And then that's when the conversation started with Matt about redemption. So it was like I just progressed quickly because other people I worked with didn't want it.
That's great. I mean, it's another example of how hard graft and committing to something can progress you somewhere relatively quickly, which is great. That's fantastic, that, mate. I think going on to question 3, and this is a question that kind of culminates 1 and 2. So you've had your setup process, you rated it a 5, which is kind of middle ground. You really overcame things quite easily because of how assertive you were, and you rated that a 2. Rate your business happiness right now.
I'd probably say 9, close to a 10. Yeah, because it's like there's often moments on weekends where I'll look how full we are, and I look at the queue, and I still can't believe it.
Yeah.
So to have them moments still now, as in like why are we busy? Why is it like this? It still like blows my mind. And I have friends that come in that work in central Manchester, and they work for the so-called bigger coffee shops and things like that, and they'll come into the shop and they're like, this is crazy. So even now, like, I'll have moments on Saturdays and Sundays where I'll be like, this is amazing. Like I can't fault it.
Yeah.
And there's even things from like a selfish point of view, like a lot of the customer base that we get in are people that like I look up to a lot, or we get a lot of like rugby lads in, football lads in that are amazing, and I'm like, it's like business and pleasure. I get to spend time with all these amazing people, and it's my job. So yeah, for me, it's just great.
That's brilliant. And I think as a piece of advice, being able to enjoy what you do with people that you enjoy being around, whether it be staff, whether it be customers, whether it be clients, that's ultimately what you start a business for. Because like you said before, no one wants to work with dickheads, whether it be client side or as a colleague. So that's fantastic to hear that, mate. And I think, given that obviously you've rated yourself a 9, anyone who rates themselves a 10 is probably lying to themselves, because when we had Fash on episode 1, he said like, I'm a 7 or an 8, because you can never really be completely happy with what you do, because then you stop progressing.
Yeah, of course.
So what's next for Mayhap?
So we're hoping to launch a coffee roastery we will be launching coffee roastery for Manchester Coffee Festival this year.
Oh wow, okay.
So it's going to be called Odinoke. So the house coffee that you've got in the shop at the moment is what we roast in house. Some of the same as the retail product. So the next part is just finding other coffee shops, bars, restaurants, wholesale clients, and that's it really. I think that'll be the next step. And we had discussions about opening a second shop, but the first shop is still, needs our attention. So I think there will be a time where a second shop, third shop comes, but I think for now we just need to focus on Mayhap and then get this roastery up and running as well. So going to be really exciting.
Good stuff. Yeah, it sounds it, mate. And building an empire is a gradual thing, isn't it? I mean, like you said before, 4 years in the business to get to where you've done, with Matt's experience as well. It's fantastic, mate. I really appreciate you coming on. I think that we've had a good chat about obviously your business setup, and I wish you all the best, and I'll see you soon for another stack of pancakes and a coffee, pal.
You will. Cheers, man.
Thank you very much, Reece. Cheers.